Ever heard about the dark side of paradise cruises? Let me take you to the Caribbean in 1998, where one family boarded a luxury ship for the trip of a lifetime, and one of them never came back. She vanished between sunrise and breakfast. No body, no clues, no answers. This is the real story of Amy Lynn Bradley, the woman who disappeared from a cruise ship and was never seen again. Imagine standing on your private balcony, waves glittering below, steel blue dawn breaking across the sea. That's how the Bradleys began their morning aboard the Royal Caribbean Rhapsody of the Seas. Amy Lynn Bradley, 23 years old, athletic, bright, about to start a new job back home in Virginia, was laughing with her dad around 5:30 a.m. He told her he was going back to bed for a bit. When he woke up again, Amy was gone. Her shoes, her cigarettes, even her room key still on the balcony. No splash, no scream, no track. The ship's crew announced she'd probably gone ashore early. But there was one small problem. The Rhapsody hadn't docked yet. When the Bradleys begged security to make an announcement or lock down the vessel, officials refused, worried it would alarm the guests. By the time Royal Caribbean finally notified the Coast Guard, hours later, the ship had already sailed 120 miles. Search helicopters combed the turquoise waters. Nothing. And then something impossible started happening. Crew members admitted seeing Amy talking with a ship's band member, known only as Yellow. Security footage later showed her dancing with him in the ship's nightclub just hours before she vanished. When investigators tried to re-interview him, he'd quietly disembarked. Never seen again. Here's what's real and verified. Date, March 24th, 1998. Location, between Curacao and Aruba. Ship, Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas. Status, Amy Lynn Bradley officially listed as missing at sea by the FBI. Her case remains one of the most baffling disappearances in maritime history. But this is where things take a dark turn, because months later, tourists start reporting seeing Amy alive. On beaches, in bars, even in brothels. Could she have been kidnapped and sold? Or is something even more disturbing hiding beneath the waves? The sightings that shouldn't exist. What if you vanished and people kept seeing you? Not once, not twice, but over years. In different countries, under different names. That's what happened after Amy Lynn Bradley disappeared from her family's cruise cabin in 1998. And the sightings that followed weren't from conspiracy theorists. They came from military officers, tourists, even divers. So how do you explain a missing woman who keeps reappearing but can't be found? When the Rhapsody of the Seas finally docked in Curacao, the Bradley family refused to disembark. They were certain Amy was still on that ship, trapped, hidden, or injured somewhere below deck. Royal Caribbean insisted they had searched, but the Bradleys weren't convinced. Ron Bradley, Amy's father, later said, "I knew she didn't fall overboard. Amy was too strong a swimmer. Someone took her." The family stayed behind in Curacao for days, plastering missing person posters across docks and tourist spots. Locals promised to keep watch. And then the whispers began. 5 months after Amy vanished, 2 Canadian scuba divers reported something impossible. While diving at Playa Porto Marie, they surfaced near a small beach bar and saw a woman walking with 2 men. She looked tense, head low, shoulders hunched. And when the divers greeted her in English, she froze. Then one of the men touched her arm, said something sharp in another language, and she was led away. The divers didn't know about the missing person case until later, when they saw Amy's picture on a news bulletin back in Canada. They called the FBI immediately. Both described the same thing: a tattoo of a gecko lizard around her navel, a ring on her right toe, a watch on her left wrist, exactly as Amy's family had described. For investigators, it was the first real spark of hope. But by the time agents arrived on the island, the beach bar owner claimed he hadn't seen anyone matching that description. No surveillance, no witnesses, just a rumor that the 2 men she was with were connected to a local escort network. Hope turned into confusion, and that wouldn't be the last time someone claimed to see Amy alive. Nearly a year later, another sighting. This one even stranger. U.S. Navy Petty Officer William Hefner was visiting a brothel in Curacao. He claimed a woman approached him quietly and said, "My name is Amy Bradley. I need help." Before he could react, two men pulled her away. He reported the encounter immediately. Naval investigators contacted the Bradley family to compare details. Hefner described tattoos identical to Amy's, right down to a Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball on her shoulder. The lead seemed promising, but once again, by the time authorities returned to the site, the brothel had been cleared out. The owner said he had no idea who the woman was. It was another dead end. But this time, Amy's family believed it wasn't coincidence. Somebody, somewhere, was making sure she stayed hidden. Each new report followed the same eerie pattern. Amy appears alive under watch. The sighting happens in Curacao or nearby islands. Witnesses describe her as confused but compliant, as if she knows resistance would be dangerous. The FBI publicly acknowledged credible sightings, though no physical proof emerged. For the Bradleys, these reports weren't random. They were breadcrumbs leading somewhere dark. Years passed. Then, in 2005, a woman from Virginia, the same home state as Amy, claimed she saw her in a department store restroom in Barbados. The witness said 4 men escorted the woman inside. She looked terrified. When the men stepped out briefly, the woman whispered, "Can we stop and see the children?" before being rushed out again. The witness later saw Amy's photo on television and nearly collapsed. She contacted authorities, giving precise details of the men, the store, the accents. Composite sketches were drawn. Investigators never confirmed the identity of that woman. But to Amy's parents, the phrasing, "Can we stop and see the children?" sounded like someone conditioned, monitored, and desperate to speak safely. Back on the ship, there was still one unresolved name, Alistair Yellow Douglas. He'd been friendly with Amy during the cruise, dancing, chatting, maybe more. After she disappeared, he reportedly approached Amy's brother and said, "I'm sorry about your sister." But at that time, hardly anyone knew she was missing. The FBI questioned him. He passed a polygraph. He was never charged. Yet witnesses said he left the ship at the next port without notice. To this day, his role, if any, remains one of the case's most debated mysteries. And yet, the most haunting clues came not from witnesses, but from what started disappearing. Unable to rely on official channels, Amy's parents turned into investigators. They hired private detectives, circulated updated sketches, and even worked with psychics when logic failed. At one point, they received an anonymous email claiming Amy was being held in a house outside Curacao. The sender offered to rescue her for $200,000. Desperate, the family contacted the FBI, who traced the message to a scam artist in Florida. Even so, the Bradleys never stopped chasing leads. Ron Bradley later said, "Every phone call after midnight, when we'd both wake up, we'd look at each other and think, maybe this is it." Hope, even false hope, was the only thing keeping them alive. Amy's case became a cautionary tale on every true crime program in America. Her face appeared on America's Most Wanted, The Montel Williams Show, Dateline NBC. Each new broadcast brought a wave of tips, none ever proven. Meanwhile, cruise ships kept sailing the same routes, past the same turquoise waters that may have swallowed the truth. For Amy's family, every rumor meant reopening a wound. They couldn't mourn her. They couldn't rescue her. They just waited, between hope and heartbreak, for an answer that never came. But in the background, something else was happening. Evidence quietly disappearing, files being sealed, and one photo that would shake the entire investigation. Soon we uncover the hidden documents, the missing footage, and the photograph the FBI still won't close. Because if the sightings were real, someone made sure we'd never prove it. From the moment Amy went missing, one thing stands out: the silence. The Rhapsody of the Seas continued to operate as if nothing had happened. Passengers lounged on deck chairs, breakfast was served, the casino stayed open. But somewhere below, a cabin had become a crime scene, and it was being cleaned. Hours after the disappearance, crew members were seen vacuuming the Bradleys' cabin, changing sheets, removing linens, long before investigators arrived. No fingerprinting, no luminol tests, no forensic photographs. By the time the FBI boarded the vessel in Curacao, most potential evidence was gone. Cruise ship protocols should preserve a missing person's room until authorities can examine it. But back in 1998, maritime jurisdiction was a foggy maze, and that loophole might have been the difference between truth and mystery. Here's what most travelers don't realize. When you're on a cruise ship, you're not technically under your country's law. You're under the flag state, the nation where that ship is registered. In Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas, registered in Liberia. That means in 1998, Amy's disappearance was governed not by U.S. law, not by Caribbean law, but by Liberian Maritime Authority, which had little power and even less incentive to investigate. According to the International Cruise Victims Association, cruise ships sail through floating jurisdictions, loopholes that make justice nearly impossible. In Amy's case, that loophole allowed the company to control the narrative. Royal Caribbean handled its own security, its own evidence collection, its own press releases, and while Amy's family begged for help, corporate lawyers were already preparing statements to protect the brand, not the truth. One of the most disturbing parts of this case isn't what was found, it's what wasn't. When investigators requested the ship's full security footage, Royal Caribbean claimed the cameras in that section of the ship weren't recording. No hallway footage, no deck footage, just one grainy image of Amy dancing hours before she vanished. Even more suspicious, the ship's manifest, the full list of passengers and crew, was reportedly updated between the night she disappeared and the time the FBI got on board. Some staff names were missing. One entire entertainment contractor allegedly left the vessel at the next port without clearance. Whether this was negligence or deliberate obfuscation, we'll never know. But if someone wanted to make a person vanish at sea, the system was built to help them succeed. In 2005, 7 years after Amy vanished, a photograph surfaced online that sent shivers through her family. It was posted on a site used to advertise sex workers in the Caribbean. The woman in the photo bore a haunting resemblance to Amy. Same green eyes, same tattoos, same hairline. She appeared distressed, posed on a bed half-dressed. When forensic analysts compared the image to Amy's college photos, the similarities were undeniable. The FBI opened a file, traced the IP address, and found the photo originated from an online modeling site based in Barbados. But when they tried to subpoena the company, it was gone. The photo deleted the domain offline. To this day, the FBI lists that image as unverified but credible. For the Bradleys, it wasn't proof, but it was enough to reignite their belief. Amy might have survived, trapped in a nightmare. In the years following her disappearance, journalists and private investigators uncovered disturbing parallels with human trafficking rings operating in the Caribbean during the late 1990s. According to Interpol data, women abducted from cruise ships or port cities were often transported between islands for forced labor or sexual exploitation. Investigators working with Amy's family found reports of trafficking networks operating out of Curacao and Aruba, the same route the Rhapsody of the Seas sailed. The pattern matched. Young, attractive, English-speaking women abducted while traveling, then vanished across maritime borders. Some experts now argue that Amy's case could have been an early example of organized trafficking through cruise networks, using ports, crew members, and contractors as conduits. Because when the sea is your highway, it's easy to disappear someone, and harder still to prove it ever happened. In 2010, Royal Caribbean finally released a statement acknowledging deep sympathy for the Bradley family, but they stopped short of accepting any responsibility. By then, lawsuits had been filed and dismissed, citing jurisdictional immunity. The cruise industry is worth billions and self-polices most of its crimes. According to U.S. congressional reports, less than 7% of serious incidents on cruise ships ever result in criminal prosecution. And yet, each year, hundreds of passengers are reported missing or assaulted, with the majority never solved. Amy's disappearance didn't just expose a single tragedy, it exposed an entire system built to float above the law. In 2025, a new documentary series called Disappeared at Sea, the Amy Bradley Files reignited public interest. Using AI facial reconstruction, experts compared the 2005 brothel photo to Amy's genetic facial structure, with a 72% probability match. New whistleblowers, including former Royal Caribbean staff, came forward saying they were ordered to stay silent back in 1998. One even claimed a crew member bragged about knowing what happened to the girl from Virginia. The FBI has reopened parts of the investigation, focusing on trafficking routes and cruise crew databases. For Amy's family, that means one thing. After nearly 3 decades, hope still lives. Amy Lynn Bradley boarded a cruise ship in the Caribbean, a bright young woman on vacation. And somewhere between sunrise and open water, she became a ghost story. No wreckage, no confession, just silence. And a photograph that refuses to fade. Maybe one day we'll know where Amy went. Until then, her story reminds us that paradise can hide monsters, and that sometimes the most dangerous waters are the ones we think are safe. If this story gripped you, subscribe, because next week we're diving into another unsolved maritime mystery. The couple who vanished off their honeymoon yacht, leaving behind a single glass of champagne, still cold.